How I'm going to play our in. Boom. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Only Your Gifts, a show created by myself and my legendary co-host, Joey Pilaro. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to help teach and share age-old cutting-edge tips, tools, exercises, and hacks to plug into the higher force of gratitude. We're also incredibly blessed to have a special guest join us each week. And this week, we have Jamison. I look forward to learning much more. Joey, how you doing today, brother?
I'm here. I'm ready to get vulnerable. I had a shit show of a day, but it's important that we're people in recovery, and we stay sober a day at a time, and we don't get points for style.
Mate,
So
I hear that our guest again today has got a similar sobriety date to us, so we're all looking like in the same month. Let's bring him on.
yeah.
Well, welcome, Jamison. How are you, brother?
Hey, Jammers.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, where are you coming in from, Jamison?
I'm coming in from Utah, Sandy, Utah, just Salt Lake Valley, so Salt Lake City.
That's mad. Joey, I just love this ability for us to be able to connect from across the world, talking the same language of recovery. And if anyone out there is joining us again, returning back, thank you so much for joining us again. Please drop your comments. Let us know where you're watching from. It helps us drive a bit of engagement and get our reach out there. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. This is a show where Joey and I interview guests around our recovery and our experiences with gratitude and how to plug into the higher forces of it. So, Jamison, it's awesome to meet you, mate, and I look forward to learning more about what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, Jammer and I met him when I crawled into rehab in August 2009. He was over there. We call it like to call it finishing school himself. And so I've also I lived there for about 3 years before I came back to New Jersey, and we became really good friends, and I'm friends with his brother, and we know a lot of the same people, and it's always an interesting perspective because he's seen me at my absolute worst. And sometimes as a person in recovery, it's really hard to get in touch with the pain associated with it. It's a whole lot easier to get in touch with the relief that's associated with the drink or the drug or the addictive behavior. I need to get reminded every single day, which is why I attend, community meetings, recovery-based meetings. So I'm reminded of what the pain feels like. But I understand it intellectually, but the truth is I can't really taste it. And that's fucking scary to me. Like, you would think after 2 decades of abusing alcohol and drugs and most consequences associated with that and all the pain and suffering I caused and put myself through, that it would be, I would be able to access that. And I think that's one of the tricky parts of the disease. They say, alcoholism, insanely short memory.
Sure.
So Jammer, introduce yourself.
Please.
Well,
Tell
yeah,
us a little bit.
I'm Jamison, and like Joey said, I met him out here in Utah when, I was there in July. Well, I was there in July. It must have been August 2009, Joey, yeah, when you rolled through?
August 20th.
And, I was there when Joey got there. He was my roommate. And I'd been there 3 weeks or so, and then strolling through the door came Joey. And then we started this journey together, lived together for a little bit after treatment. And so, yeah, I'm from Utah, religious background out here, which is common. I found drugs ease my pain really early on. I always say I was destined to be a drug addict, because it was just like when I had that first little glimpse of the relief that was provided for me, there was no stopping. It was full ahead, and my life, that's what my life became about. And did that for a while, had some ups, had some downs, and ended up pretty low. Entered treatment, and then I've been on this path of recovery. I'm happy to share however much, I can do this for a long time. I'm happy to share however much you guys need, but I've been on this journey for recovery for a long time. It's had its own ups and downs and its own struggles and its own it's its own path altogether, right? And so I've had to discover myself in this realm, and ended up going to school and becoming a therapist, and now I work at that treatment center that Joey and I dragged our asses into, a dozen years ago.
Yeah, we're going to dig a lot deeper into your story, and how your adversity today is your greatest strength to not only grow and heal, but contribute beyond yourself as somebody who's in the field. But we like to start the show, Danny, with briefly discussing something that we did well today, like a little inventory, and something that we can do better tomorrow. And Danny, why don't you start us off?
I was having to think about this before we got the show started, and it is Jameson. It's 11 a.m. here in Sydney. I'm in the future. It's Friday for you, and sometimes I guess and I often talk about doing some exercise, some training in the morning, which I did do once again. And I've got to say, that's one of the most powerful things. But guys, and this is a bit of a strange one, but I bought a kitten maybe 8 weeks ago. He's a legendary here. He's sitting on my lap. This is Leonardo. And one thing, right? This is crazy, right? But one thing I forgot about. They got to go to the toilet. And it's a bit of a pain in the ass. Doing kitty litter, and I bought this training kit, right, to teach him to go to the human toilet, right? Now you're not going to believe it. Like, the cat has picked it up in 4 or 5 days. They said it's over 6 weeks, right? But I guess what I want to acknowledge that I did well is just a bit of patience and trust that Anyway, so the cat's already going to the human toilet, which is I know it's a strange one to bring, but I can't.
Congratulations, Danny.
I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted. It's actually helped make my life easy. The last week I've had to clean after him extra more because he flicks bloody shit everywhere. But yeah. Anyway, look, I'm chuffed. I'm chuffed about that. And something I could do.
The cat's trained to go in the toilet.
Man, almost yes,
bro.
You
trained him. This is what you did well today.
Yeah, I
thought that was only in Meet the Parents. I didn't know that was real. That's great.
That's where I got the idea from. So anyway, look, if you got a cat out there, I'm telling you, there's this product called Quiddy Litter or something, and it's absolutely, I cannot freaking believe it. Anyway. So that's I killed it in that area. There's patience and tolerance, and things I could do better tomorrow would be I've been on a couple of cigarettes this last week and a half, and I'd like to stop doing that. And to be honest, my willingness isn't even there at the moment, and I just want to acknowledge that too, because yeah, it's somewhere I'm falling short at the moment. And this stuff all ties into addiction. It ties into the way I change the way I feel, and I use product outside of myself because something's missing in here, So, yeah, it's something I could do better tomorrow. Jamison, what about you, brother? Something you did well today and something you could possibly work on for tomorrow? You got anything?
Yeah, something I did well today. I mean, I think a good gauge I have for my mental health is how well I'm communicating and responding to text messages and work stuff and emails, and that's the easiest shit to just not do. And I think today I did that stuff. And so I get to leave work. I'm at work right now, and I'll leave after this, and I'll get to leave work with a clear mind and not having to carry any of that stuff home.
Good
If I
man.
can do well tomorrow, it's like, I'm really big on a morning routine. I'm generally feeling and thinking, doing better when I have my stuff, whatever that is in that period of my recovery that I've identified. It's changed a lot, but and I haven't been doing that, and I can for sure be doing that better. And so my mental space is a lot better when I'm up and I'm into my stuff in the morning.
Absolutely, man. It's all recovery stuff, isn't it? We're talking, this is just life stuff, but beautiful. What about you, Joey?
I love that Jammer touched on the morning routine. That's the one thing I cannot go without, and I am so grateful that it runs on automatic. And that's what I did well today. Is I nailed my morning routine, and like to tell you the truth, I had such an emotional day that if I didn't start my day addressing my disease and managing my mental and emotional hygiene and practicing gratitude and changing my physiology, I don't even know. I probably would have went out and caused some fucking damage today at some point. Not like there's a good chance I wouldn't pick up a drink or a drug. However, there's lots of ways that I can cause damage, specifically to myself and the way that I speak to myself. So I nailed my morning routine this morning, and it consists of multiple things, but definitely I always touch on something mental, something emotional, something physical, and something spiritual. And it runs on automatic. I do it the second I get up because I wake up to my disease every morning, and that's a beauty about a habit. A habit can go both ways, and I have some good healthy living habits, and I'm really grateful for that. So I did that well. Aside from that, I didn't do much else well other than show up here and share with everybody, so what I could do better tomorrow is when I'm triggered emotionally, to realize that I'm being triggered emotionally. And most of the time, it triggers something from my past, an old hurt. Eckhart Tolle likes to call it pain body. And, the only way to dissolve that is with awareness. And if I miss it and I don't identify it for what it is, it snowballs and it builds momentum really quickly. And it's really tough no matter what, I throw at it: prayer, meditation, exercise, gratitude. It built up steam. So what I can do better is identifying when I'm being triggered, when it comes up, and shifting it, or asking for help, or picking up the phone and asking for help and talking to a brother or a sister in recovery, or somebody who I trust, and be able to get on top of it before it snowballs, and I end up wasting a day, messing around in my head. So that's my lineup.
Thanks, Joey. I just want to touch on that fact that it's around self-awareness, isn't it? What you're talking about there. And that's exactly what this little tool is that we love to participate in the beginning of the show. And for anyone out there who doesn't know, this is, step 10 in the fellowship around just identifying what we've done well today and what we could possibly do tomorrow. And this tool helps me so much in life, it helps me to grow, and it helps me to become aware of the shit I need to work on. Jamison, amazingly enough, brother, your story is so similar to mine. I work in the treatment center, and I've just finished work that I got clean in back in September 2009. So I can't wait to hear a little bit more about what it is you do. One of the things I often say when people ask what I do is I say I help people. I teach people to live, because that's all I get paid to do, recovery, basically, and so I'd love to hear what your experience is like. What's the name of your treatment center? Can you mention that? Do you want to mention that?
I think I can. Yeah, it's Renaissance Ranch.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Utah. That's amazing. So how does your day look at work? So it's evening, obviously. There, it's 9 p.m. in Utah, is it?
7 p.m.
Oh, okay. Well, you're behind Joey.
Yeah, we're 2 hours off of Joey. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what your day looks like and what is it that you consider your position to be? What do you do there?
So I work at like in an outpatient. So we have a residential and an outpatient. I work in the outpatient. I work mostly evenings. It's like on the other side of the wall that I'm looking at is like the group that I'm usually running. And tonight I'm, joining you fine gentlemen. So that's what I do. I run groups. I meet individually with guys. I'm the clinical director here, which means managing some staff and doing some stuff like that. But I like what you said. It's like what we believe in a lot here, and like what I believe in recovery, and what has worked for me, and what continues to either work or not work for me in recovery, depending on, again, how I'm doing and how I'm engaging, is connection. So whether that means like teaching guys how to live, or just showing up for them, or laughing with them, or talking a little bit of shit, or like whatever it is, it's like that's what I like. I like to sit down and connect with guys and laugh. That's the most important part of what I see is my job and like our job here and what we do. And then on the side, what I like to do is trauma treatments. I'm an EMDR therapist, and I love to dig into the past and get into people's minds and their bodies, and like, let's clean some stuff out, find some stuck memories and jiggle those loose and start to process them the way they should have been, way back when. So I do a little bit of that. We do a lot of connecting, running groups, laughing with my coworkers. A lot of my coworkers, like, Joey knows them, and they got sober with us, and I work with my brother and a couple of my best friends, and it's a pretty easy, good life out here. That's what working in treatment looks like for me in Utah.
I love that, man. That place is sacred to me, and all the people there were like angels to me. I was so broken, and when I limped into that place, one of my first memories is, I walked in, and I was being propelled by a higher force at this time, mind you, because I was taking steps in the direction of this place while my head and every cell in my body was screaming to me to run. And it continued like this for months on end. And so I know at that point in my life, I was being carried or propelled or pushed or dragged by something higher than me, because I didn't have anything to do with it. But I remember walking in the door, I was sick as sick can get. I had a $300 a day heroin habit. I was coming off the streets. I had no desire to stay sober. I was there to buy time. I was there to buy time to come up with a new plan, and I didn't know what that was going to be, but I definitely wasn't done. But the moment I remember is I walked in, and it's an all male treatment center, and one of the main things that they do there, they don't hit you over the head with the Bible or the Book of Mormon, or don't even necessarily hit you over the head with the big book, but they do teach us how to live. And the guys were cleaning up after dinner. There was a bunch of guys doing dishes and people mopping the floor, and my first thought was, I can't do that shit. Like, I can't do that. Like, that's how disheveled I was. Like, I didn't even think that I could spend 20 minutes doing dishes, because I had it in years. I had completely forgotten how to live. And so, like, that was one of my first memories there in Utah. And I want to talk more about the connection, because, James, we're all going to be able to chime in here, but Jameson mentioned that, as a young child, he felt broken, or other than, or less than, separate from others. And I think that this is a common thread, not only with a lot of humans. I don't think addicts in recovery have cornered the market on this. Like, connection is a problem. And I'll speak for me, is that I always felt separate from other people. I could be surrounded by people that love me, that have my best interest in mind and feel completely alone. The scariest, this is how I operated for, I don't even know why. I think I came into the world this way, but I kept everybody at arm's length. So like true connection, intimacy, into me see, which I also learned there at that place. And when it was brought to my attention and that word was broke down into those 4 sections, I actually understood what it meant. I didn't understand what it meant before, but I know that that was my problem. I always felt other than and separate. And I think that's a catalyst to seek outside things to change the way we feel, or to seek some sort of spirit or connection, because the real human connection is there's nothing more terrifying than me. And so, you know, I was recently interviewed from somebody, and they were talking about addiction prevention. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know shit about addiction prevention. I'm like, if I knew about addiction prevention, I probably would have prevented it. But I think it's important to be able to identify that shit starts in our thinking. And if there's anything that we can do to prevent it, is to see commonality between other human beings and the way that their minds work and the way that our minds work. Because I always, in order for me to do that, I would need to communicate. You know what I mean? Or I would need to be able to even listen or look around and see some messages. So, you know, I think if you know, understanding our thoughts and realizing that my thoughts aren't any sicker than the next guy, no matter what their status is in life, you know? So I think that would be something to discuss. And I'm curious for both you and Danny, really, and you guys can both touch on this, is because you guys are on the front lines of this thing when people are crawling into these treatment centers. Would you say that it's, you know, that is a, you know, an underlying common thread amongst people who either stumble on or choose alcohol and drugs for their solution to life? Danny, you want to chime in?
Yeah.
There? Or Jam or whatever?
Yeah, just touching on that was the subject, the heading for this live, wasn't it? The opposite to addiction is connection. And yeah, I'd love to hear what both of your actual thoughts are on that statement, exactly. Like, what does that mean? But for me, yeah, look, I've just come off a 48-hour shift living with a bunch of men in the early days of recovery, right? And it's really it's important at the moment in Sydney. We're in this huge lockdown where you basically aren't even allowed to go out of the house. Now, the boys in the house certainly aren't allowed to go out of the house, right? So, and what's happening is we're getting on a lot of fellowship meetings with other people in Sydney, and a lot of people out there are basically home alone. Now, these guys at my centre are at least connected with 7 other men or 6 other men, so they've got that level of connection going, and it goes like it makes it we're not alone. You know, we're not alone when we connect with other human beings. And my default for 17 years through my using really was isolation, you know, and all the trauma that came with that. But I thought I hated people, you know. In fact, I was just scared and fearful of uncomfortable moments with people, intimacy, Joey, just as you mentioned. So I truly do believe absolutely the opposite to addiction is connection. All that means for me exactly is that if I'm able to connect with other people, like-minded people and not like-minded people, but to be able to listen and also share my own experiences, there's a real huge power in that. And it gets me out of my head, and gives me a bit of and compassion and kindness come into that too, which are 2 big principles that are really important to me. And that's what I get from human connection. I'm not a big fan of it either still, but I do it because I know I need to do it. I do it every single day. I don't know that one single day in the last 11 years, 10 months or whatever it is that I've abandoned my friends and my, I've always kept that in mind, that I need to stay connected. And I think that's really a big reason why I'm still here, What about you, Jamison?
Yeah, I mean, I just love everything that you guys have said, and I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to validate Joey talked about his story and how he's a miracle real quick before I jump into that, because so Joey's like this treatment center here where we work and where me and Joey went is mostly like religious LDS Mormon or post-Mormon and from Utah. So when Joey says he's a miracle and he was, or I don't know if he said he was a miracle, but you were following God or there was a reason you were here, it's like, we don't get many dudes from New Jersey with no connection to Mormonism. And so what an interesting story. Like some really loose connections out here is what I think Joey, right, is what brought you out here. But just incredible that a dude like him ended up here and in our lives and, ended up, connecting, as we're talking about, with a lot of us, man. And he still connected a lot of us. Joey was able to come and share his story with our guys, a month or two ago as we were all on Zoom. So, but yeah, I think just to validate all that, it's like everybody, most of the guys that we treat and me, myself, that we come in telling ourselves these lies on why we're different. Or why we can't do certain things, and we put up these mechanisms to block us from connecting with other people. And, everything's different for us. It's like, I understand that works for you, but you just don't understand why that's not going to work for me. Like, you just don't understand me. And that's the mentality we come in with. We put up these walls, and I see it with these guys. And over the course of treatment, hopefully what we do is allow these dudes to bring down those walls and let us into their lives so they can see, oh, I'm not so different. They can feel that love. And that's the easy part. It's like, once you see like, okay, I can feel the love, I can feel the connection. Then the hard part is I've now lost my best excuse to not get my feet moving. And that's what we do here. And that was my story. It's like I went through 60 days of inpatient treatment without letting my walls down. And and some of my best barriers are isolation and staying quiet and flying under the radar. And I'm an introverted guy, and I'm not. And and so I went through 60 days of treatment, and my name wasn't said very much in the group room, and I kept my head down, and I kept kind of like, and I stayed sick. And so when I got out and life got really, really difficult, now life's difficult. I'm in pain. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. I didn't really know those things about myself because I've been using for 10 years. And so I get out. I no longer have any drugs or alcohol to treat this shit. I'm in a lot of pain. I had no choice but to crawl my ass into our aftercare program and tell them, like accidentally let the secret slip. It's like, oh, by the way, I'm in a lot of pain and I always have been. And that's when I felt it. And then I had a group of guys like, man, they saw me and I could feel that they saw me for the first time. And up to that point, I'd just been going through the motions. And then I could feel that connection, like, oh my gosh. Like, that's when I knew, one, that other people were having the same experience that I was when I was convinced no one else was. And two, my excuses were gone. And so it was either time to wallow in that kind of self-pity pool of like, or get on the horse and get going and start, moving my feet and making some things happen in recovery.
Brilliant. Absolutely.
It's so fascinating to me that you said that, because it just shows that we're expert at wearing masks, because I was inpatient with Jameson for a couple months. And, like you said, we lived together shortly and we were doing recovery together there. And I would have never guessed in a million years that he was in pain. My story was that like, I got a lot sicker before I got any better. I latched on. I latched on to that self-pity and that victimhood, and I got a diagnosis of being depressed, and I took that diagnosis on as my identity. And I did depression better than anybody else, and I used it to manipulate the world. I used it to stay sick. I used it to not jump into the stream of life, and I used it to get attention. And, and this is, I'm a daily meeting maker. I'm still a daily meeting maker. I took the 12 steps. It just was my journey. And I think it's I guess this is another conversation for another show, but the power of identity, when you get something and someone identifies you and labels you and you make it your identity, it works both ways too. It could be it can make or break you. It can be incredibly disempowering, or you could take on the identity of somebody who's well, and somebody who's growing, and somebody who's contributing by themselves. It's the same thing when you're working with habits. Like, if you're looking to build a habit, the first step of building a habit in order to establish it is to take on the identity of somebody who already has the habit. So identities are very, very, very powerful. And I in general, I think pain and challenges drive our evolution. I believe that the universe puts us in these situations specifically to help us grow and make us fit to be of service to somebody walking along the same path. And like, that's where the meaning part comes in. Like, that's how my past and my pain and my failures and my mistakes become, by giving it that kind of meaning, it's no longer skeletons in the closet. It's no longer something to be ashamed about. It's not even pain. They're now strengths. They're now virtues. They're now gifts, once I own them, So, yeah, Danny, what do you got to say about all this?
Cool. Yeah. A couple of things. Let me just touch on one thing I wanted to say is that, I think there's a lot of people out there, and certainly our listeners, people who aren't in the know of the treatment, available to us. Like, it's one of the things. It goes back to that connection. If you don't know, you don't know as well. And I just want to touch on, and my experience is that certainly, even if you reach out to one of us, maybe we could steer you in the right direction. But I think, against popular belief, I think there is a lot of treatment available. You just maybe need to know where to look. So I just wanted to let anyone know who might be suffering out there with any treatment or addiction issues that might want to be getting some help. There's so much available if you know where to look. And I'm sure any one of the three of us would be more than happy to steer you in the right direction. And I love what Jamison said around coming back after that 60 days. Remind me of the turning point. That was your turning point, wasn't it, Jamison? That was the day or the period that you started to realize, fuck, if I don't start doing this myself and putting in the effort, being brave and reaching out and telling people about what's going on, I'm not going to make it, And I feel like that was, and mine was very similar too, brother. Like 60 days was also my turning point. And amazingly enough for me, after 17 years of attempting, that was basically, it was the turning point, but it was also the period that I lost my obsession to use. I haven't really come that close to picking up again since that time. And that's almost, 11 and a half years ago, because I took that next step to reach out and connect with people and share my struggles, So I love that you mentioned that. Again, it's very similar to me.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, we all, it's like recovery begins with experiences like that all over the place, and it's like one of the beautiful things about being in this field and in recovery. And I heard on a podcast, I've been sharing this a lot with people recently because I think it's so powerful, but I heard on a podcast recently, this woman was sharing her journey, and like a lot of us, it took her a lot to get her to go to her first 12-step meeting. And she's like, I kind of dragged my ass into this meeting. And then she got there and realized that that's where the honest people were. And isn't that just like exactly what it is? Because I get to walk around in life, and, I'm in a situation in my life right now where I see a lot of people from my past, like from high school or whatever, because I moved. And it's mind numbing sometimes to put on the, to watch people have the mask on, to put them and play this game where we're pretending to, I don't know what we're pretending to do. And then you get into treatment or into 12-step community, and it's like, that's where the honest people are, truly. And you hear people there tell what's real, and they talk about the struggle, and they talk about, how they use things like drugs and alcohol to cover up what's really there. I told my about that aftercare experience, and it's like, I think that I told in treatment that alcohol and drugs weren't my problem, and I could understand that in my head. Could wrap my mind around that. It's like, yeah, that makes sense, and then I got to feel it in that moment when I had lost the solution and had no hope, and and then you feel it like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? Like, this is not fun to be sober without drugs and alcohol. That's what it was early on, and it gets really great after that. But so anyway, yeah, I agree with you. Where honest people live, this is where we connect.
For sure. What was your turning point, Joey?
Oh my God, there's been so many. Like, I get like, and usually pain is the catalyst. So I've had many. I think, I mentioned to you that I was being propelled. So like, I checked into a detox to get off the street, and like, I planned on coming up with a plan and getting back out there and doing it. And, I didn't have any resources, and my family didn't have any money, and I had burned every bridge and turned and pushed away anybody who was important to me, or worse. And, when I walked out of that detox and they're like, you're going to a rehab in Utah, that like the fact that I said I didn't run and I got on the plane was a turning point, right? And then I landed in Utah, and my brother, who escorted me there, we spent, a night in a hotel, and, I was casing the fucking place out, and I'm like, this is where I'm going to run.
Yeah.
And I didn't run. So there you go. There's another turning point. Then I get to the front door, and, the guy takes my cigarettes, and like, I wasn't even aware of that shit. Like, and then I'm thinking, I'm on the front steps. I'm in the middle of Utah. I'm in the woods, essentially. And I'm thinking about running, and I walk through the front doors, and it went like that. And this is like, they say with the disease, it's a program of ego reduction, right? Ego deflation. And the only way I know how to reduce my ego is to do what I don't want to do. And so pretty much each and every day, but there was multiple ones. And when I got, like I said, I mentioned, I got a lot sicker before I got any better, and I wasn't honest about it either. It started to become visible to the people that were in my outpatient program and who I was living with, that I was tanking. But the truth is that, like, aside from getting to an AA meeting with my sponsor, going to my outpatient group, I slept 20 hours a day. I obsessed about suicide and using drugs, and I didn't tell anybody about it. And fortunately, there were some people around me that were paying attention, and, called me out, and even went as far as I'm sure probably to this day, I'm the only person that's ever done this, but I was about 4 months sober, and they invited me back into the rehab because I was so sick. And, that's the last thing I wanted. The last thing I wanted was to go back into treatment, and sober. I went back into treatment sober, 4 months sober. That was gigantic for me. These were a lot of little ones leading to one huge turning point. And something happened. And this was also the first taste where I felt that I had something to offer. And I have never felt that way in my entire life up until that point, including the 3 months that I was in there previous. Like, I knew that I had, regardless of my mental state, my emotional state, my behavior, that I had stayed sober, which is a flat out miracle, right? It's like the burning bush. The seas have parted. Like, I've stayed sober for 4 months. And I went back into this recovery community, and were people crawling in there who didn't think that they could stay sober for 1 hour. And I was like, wait a minute here. So, like, I felt useful. I felt like I could add. I felt like I can add to the situation there. And that was a huge gift for me. And then, it just goes on and on. Like, I reach turning points and jumping off places all the time. I mean, that's what life's about. Like, that's what growth is about. Like, you can't grow if you haven't reached a turning point. Like, you need to be doing something different. So something needs to turn, right? You're either going to turn it up or you're going to turn it down, or you're going to make a left or a right, but you need to pivot, right? So
I guess as human beings or people on that journey of recovery, we've all got those multiple turning points. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. You know, that's that day we sort of started to change. And I also just want to say that, like anyone out there listening too, that there's so many of us, like there's 3 of us here right now who have been on this wonderful journey to recovery. But I know hundreds of people. I've got hundreds of people in my phone doing exactly what we're doing too. And I think sometimes out there in the world, people aren't aware of how much recovery is happening. And I think just to know that there are, you know, hundreds of thousands of us people on this journey of change who have all had these turning points and turned our life around. You know, recovery is possible. And it also reminded me that, just to let people know that access to, you know, what we've talked about, the 12-step fellowship, is so simple today. You can do it. Just click on a link, get online. If anyone out there hasn't done a meeting and would be interested in doing one, I can steer you in the right direction. It's easy to find out that information, but it's a spin out how simple it is today. And the feedback I've heard over the years around that first meeting and being exposed to other people on the same journey as us can just change your whole view on the possibilities. So I just want to touch on that.
Yeah, I think it's really important for anybody who's listening or watching that, like, we're people in recovery, and connection is the solution, but like, it's the solution. It's a human condition, right?
Yes.
There's you know, I need to be looking how I am alike other human beings. Like, especially nowadays, like, look at like how people are continuing to be divided. You know, there's like, okay, there people might have different beliefs or, you know, or different ways that they live. And, you know, all of a sudden, like, we're on separate teams. You know, it's like the only way that we can evolve as humans is to see how we're alike each other. Like, what I drive towards, and I do it imperfectly, is just to be a human amongst humans. To, when I come across somebody who rubs me the wrong way and I don't like, it's really easy for me to be like, well, you know, they're different than me, or they're fucking jerk offs, or, you know, I don't believe what they believe, and I lose sight of the common humanity. And the only way that I can connect with somebody is if I could see how we're made of the same stuff, and we're just like one another, you know?
For sure, man. It reminds me, yeah, absolutely. Like, we're all, as human beings, we're all on a journey of recovery. Absolutely. And I think connection is one of the biggest solutions to that stuff, you know. We're human beings. We're built. We're made to be, you know, not isolate and connected and not connected. You know, it's important for us to all stay connected. Boys, we're coming to the end of the show. There's normally, Jamison, it's been awesome to hear from you. I can't wait to stay connected. There's so many more questions I do have for you, and I love that you're working in that treatment center, and I'm proud of you, mate. Well done, both of you. Like, it's crazy. I think it's amazing, the similarities. And Joey, we normally wrap up this show with sharing a tip, trick, hack on how to plug into that higher force of gratitude. Have a think about that, Jamison. If there's something you'd like to share, just one little thing that you do regularly or that you'd like to share with people to sort of increase their levels of happiness. Joey, have you got something for us today, mate?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we share these tools, because in my opinion, gratitude is the most powerful higher force, and it facilitates connection between others.
Absolutely.
And it facilitates connection with our own souls, which needs to happen first. You know, my tip is you know, you can always do the basic right, just anything to shift your perspective. But a tool I've been using recently is a tool that's called the Grateful Flow. And how it's done is I close my eyes and I say to myself 3 things that I'm grateful for. It's important that they're things that I typically take for granted or expect, because it's really easy for me to be grateful to be alive, sober, and in the game, or but like things that I have as, let's call it like it is. Like I'm privileged, most of the world live on $1.50 a day. And there's people who can't feed their families and don't have a place to live. And I have all those things. So things like that. And as I'm doing that, I try to do it really slow, and I try to stretch. I try to make them not the same things every time. And each time I say it, it takes a little longer than just the writing it down. It's a little deeper. I like to feel it. You know what I mean? I like to feel it. And what that feels like to me is like my heart softening, or I start breathing deeper and easier. And so you mentioned you close your eyes and you start saying things that you're grateful for, and you start to connect with your heart, and your heart starts to soften. And then it's a visualization thing. And when I'm done with that third one, I close my eyes and I visualize being approached by a force, which is the higher force of gratitude, and it could look however you want it to look. For me, it's a bright, warm light, and I can feel it. I visualize it enveloping me,
beautiful.
And it takes me higher. It takes me higher every time. And I want to add, it's good to do that in a structured way, but the most important time to do it is when my mind is undirected. Like when I am like in a place where like I'm not creating something, or I'm not focusing on something specific, that's a breeding ground for my lower nature and my sickness. And whether that's sitting in traffic or on the line at the bank, whatever it is, these are good times to practice it. If you're driving, don't practice when you're driving. Please don't practice when you're driving.
Beautiful, Joe. What a great tool to share with people to do. I was doing it as you were saying. Beautiful. What about you, Jamison? You got some gold for us to help people plug into the higher force of gratitude?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have so many. It's hard. I was
yes.
So I thought, maybe I just share one that I've used recently, so that I'm not just spreading a bunch of bullshit out here. So I can use one. And Joey, by the way, I'm 100% stealing that. So thank you. And if you need a check in the mail or something, let me know.
Oh no, hey man, none of this stuff is original material. It's all a remix. I'll send you a detailed description of how I do it, because I give it to my clients.
Hell yeah.
And you could teach it to the boys.
So I love, as part of some of the mindfulness techniques they teach you with EMDR, they do this light stream mindfulness meditation that's really similar to that in ways. But I think that using kind of the light and the warmth as a kind of a gratitude force, as you put it, like, oh my gosh, because sometimes it's like we do the gratitude hacks, as you guys call them, or like whatever, and it's hard to connect with the emotion or the feeling. I think that mindfulness can help with that, which is kind of what I use and what I've used recently. And, my brain is convinced and dead set and is hell bent on getting me to live in the past or in the future. That's what it does best. And it gets me to, like we've talked about, separate myself from other people, and it comes up with terrible ideas, and it gets offended, and it gets into situations where I'm creating damage all around me. And so mindfulness is big for me. And so to take a moment to do a gratitude mindfulness meditation and really be present and grateful for the things that are directly around me in my space, not just things that I can grab anywhere from in my head, which I do that one too, but really be grateful for the things that are around me and I can make, that are tangible. I can see them. And I did it recently. I was with my family over the weekend up at a lake up here in Utah. And, I have like my kids with me and nieces and nephews and relationships that I've built in like this incredible recovery. And and I can get sped up and stressed out, and I'm trying to get on to the next thing. And so to take a minute to sit down and be mindful of just the things around you and where you're at, and really get into the senses and smells and sights and sounds and let that stuff in. Because if we don't do stuff like that, we're going to miss it, right? We're going to be on to the next thing, to our deathbeds, and then we're going to be in our deathbeds wondering what the fuck happened to life. And so mindfulness, be mindful of the things around us that we're grateful for.
Thank you so much, Jamison. Very similar to what Joey was saying, just a different way to use it. And anyone out there watching, please share with us if you've got a tip or a tool, a hack to plug into that higher force of gratitude. I want to, mine today, I'm thinking about service, and when I say service, I'm talking about service to other human beings is a great way to plug into that higher force. And I was just thinking a very simple one, and I think have a think about me personally when I often, as a man in recovery and as a human being, I can be very selfish, self-centered, self-seeking. And my tip today would be just to make 3 phone calls. Keeping in mind that I'm going to give a call to someone else just to see how they're going. Maybe it's someone in recovery. Maybe it's just someone, maybe it's someone who's flying and doing really well. But I think just to, give a quick call to someone or a phone call to 3 people. And keep in mind that when we're doing that, to listen, I think it's important as human beings, and to give back, just to listen. And I think ultimately at the end of it, give yourself or acknowledge within yourself that I'm doing this for other people, and I think just that is one of the keys to building gratitude in our own lives. Simple.
That's a great one. Thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you.
And I think in general, I think that the best thing that we could do for people, and what most people really need, is just to be heard and understood. That's how connection is created.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if they don't think like us.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Joey, we've got a podcast coming out very soon. Is that right? Yeah. We're in the middle of taking our online show and taking season 1 and putting it in audio format on a podcast, and you can get that wherever it is that you get your podcast, all the spots, and that should be up sooner than later. And then as we do our shows, people are gonna have the opportunity to not only watch it but listen to it in audio, and I believe that it also gives it for people who are hearing impaired, also gives it in text, which is pretty cool. How wonderful. One of the things about this show, and one of the things we are able to do, is to share the message of recovery with so many people out there. And more than often I get messages and private messages from people thanking us for this. So thank you, Jamison, so much for sharing your experience with recovery and your knowledge and wisdom around that stuff. It's much appreciated.
Of course, it's been fun and a pleasure, and thank you guys so much for having me.
Cool.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you, Danny. Danny, you always do a great job, man. I really appreciate you. Like, I tried to do the show one day without him, and I was floundering over here.
Thanks, Joey. I really do. I love it. I enjoy doing this stuff. Guys, stay with us, guys. Everyone who's joined us. Sorry, let me give a shout out to. Let me just give a shout out to David and Tabitha. Thanks so much for joining us. Kenneth is always joining us. Erica and Tanika, again, thank you for joining us. Please, I always mispronounce your name. We really, really appreciate your support. And join us next week. We've got a guest lined up for next week. So stay with us for a sec, Jamison. I'm going to end the broadcast. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.